This time we're going to begin the funeral services of Rabbi Burton H. Wax. Rabbi Leonard Matanky will be officiating. We welcome those of you who are joining us via live stream. And for those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones are turned off.
אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצות רשעים, ובדרך חטאים לא עמד, ובמושב לצים לא ישב. כי אם בתורת אדוני חפצו, ובתורתו יגע יומם ולילה. והיה כעץ שתול על פלגי מים, אשר פריו ייתן בעיתו, ועלהו לא ייבול, וכל אשר יעשה יצליח. לא כן הרשעים, כי אם כמוץ אשר תדפנו רוח, על כן לא יקומו רשעים במשפט, וחטאים בעדת צדיקים. כי יודע אדוני דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים תעבוד.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנשדשה ירביצני, על מי מנוחו שנהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות, לא ירא כי אתה עמדי. שבתך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תשענת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
It is a great honor, but a daunting task, to prepare a hesped, a eulogy for a Rav, and even more, for a Rav who was also a successful businessman, an educator of renown, a lay leader, a writer, and a scholar. Not only because there is so much that can and should be said, but also because the purpose of a eulogy is to honor the memory of the deceased and offer lessons that others can try to emulate. But how can you distill the accomplishments of one so accomplished in just a few moments? And how can one hope to emulate the life of a person who made such an indelible mark on a community around him? And yet that is the task set before me as we gather to mourn the loss of Rabbi Burton H. Wax Zatzal, the beloved husband of Maxim, dear father of Ora and Mori Aaron and Ari and Paula Wax, and cherished grandfather of Yoni and Jesse Aaron, Ilana and Hanani Teller, Jake Wax and Joshua Wax, great-grandfather of Emma, Daniela, Nikki, Ella, Max, and Teddy, and the adoring brother of Harriet Stein and brother-in-law of David Schwartz. For those who knew Rabbi Wax, Bert to so many, he was an exceptional human being without ever trying to be exceptional. Whether from his days as the expert bibliophile and businessman, first at Schwartz's Goodman Brothers Hebrew bookstore and then later at Rosenblum's, or as the Rav of Agudath Jacob and Ezras Israel, the teacher and the principal at KJS and B'nai David, or past president of Hillel Torah and the RZC, Bert was a person who knew how to draw others close, knew how to offer sage advice, knew so very much about so many things, and yet was able to share them with a sense of wonder, humility, and joy. I first got to know him at the bookstore, where he was the go-to person for a sefer or a textbook. He always knew just the right one to suggest, and later, when I would stop there to buy something, I found myself spending more time schmoozing with him than looking on the bookshelves, because speaking with Bert not only brought new perspectives to things, but also just made you feel good. 30-some years ago, Rabbi Norman Lamb Zatzal addressed a Chag HaSmicha at Yeshiva University using as his text the opening line of a tefillah we recite every morning, the words, Leolam Yehi Adam Yirei Shamayim B'Seter V'Galui. A person should always be in awe of heaven, both in private and in public. Why was it necessary, asked Rabbi Lamb, to include the phrase V'Galui, that a person must be in awe of God in public? Why not simply say, Leolam Yehi Adam Yirei Shamayim? A person should always be in awe of God. The answer he suggested was that everyone has two personas of piety. The one that is beseter, hidden, and one that is bigalui, revealed. One that is for oneself, and one that's for others. And his charge to those newly minted rabbis was to develop both personas, to learn and to grow, and to reach, and to impact. Bert received his smicha more than 30 years before Rabbi Lamb delivered that message. And yet in thinking about his life, his accomplishments, his friendships, and his family, Rabbi Burton Wax lived a life of both Yirat Shamayim B'Seter and Bigalui. He was raised in a Jewishly connected home, but as a young boy, he chose to be even more connected. He became observant while a student in public school, attended the branch of the yeshiva in Albany Park, and joined B'nai Akiva, where he met his future wife. Later, when he completed his studies and became a Rav, he never stopped learning, reading, and growing. And while he may not have heeded the advice of his Rebbe, Rabbi Regensburg Zatzal, not to leave the four walls of the yeshiva of the Beit Midrash, where Rabbi Regensburg felt if he had stayed, he would be destined to be a great Talmid Chacham, Bert's knowledge was prodigious, and his thirst for learning unbounded. And he loved history. Just yesterday, Ora shared with me an article he wrote about 10 years ago, in which he masterfully described the early challenges to, and most recently, the growth of Orthodoxy in Chicago. Add to that his personal honesty, his integrity and his character, his love of family, his devotion to his wife of 67 years, and his devotion to his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. It's clear that his life, beseter, was a life fulfilled. Which brings me to the Bagalui aspect of Rabbi Wax's life, to the many roles he played in our community. Rabbi Wax was a connector, whether from his days in the yeshiva when he and his friends, so many of whom would assume positions of leadership in our community, created bonds that lasted a lifetime, and which I'm told included some pretty unusual stories. To the more than 4 decades in the bookstores when he supported diverse schools around the country as they sought the best texts with which to teach their charges in Balabatim, from the simplest to the most erudite who sought books to enlighten their lives, and to the decades he served as a Rav, first at Jacob and later at Ezras Israel, where he shepherded diverse communities, made tough decisions, took stands, and defended the honor of Torah with such care and wisdom that even after he retired from Ezras Israel, they called him back into service. And even after he retired a second time, he continued to connect with them, support them through teaching and writing. He led and he connected at Hillel Torah, where he was not only the president, but before then, where he served as the chair of their education committee. And he did the same at the Board of Rabbis, where he was active and well-respected, and at the CRC, where he served as a long-standing officer and later understood the changes that were taking place in our community so that he was able to navigate difficult situations with skill. He connected with his friendship, his leadership, his intellect, and his ever-present Ahavat Yisrael, love of the Jewish people. This past year has not been an easy one for Rabbi Wax as the challenges to his health began to mount and his ability to be out there, to be begalui, was limited. Nevertheless, as both Ora and Maxima told me, Bert's charm and his sense of humor never stopped as he beguiled and delighted the doctors, nurses, therapists, and aides who cared for him. Quite simply, Rabbi Burton H. Wax, Harav Dov Chanoch ben Chaim Yaakov, was a rabbi, both inside and out. He was a man who was admired and cherished, who sought neither fame nor fortune, and yet changed the lives of so many through his disarming charm, modesty, and personality, beseter uvigalui. He was, as the klaf of his English smicha proclaimed, a rabbi, teacher, and preacher. He was a man who represented Torah, who communicated the beauty and majesty of Torah, and who was at all times in awe of God. But most importantly, he was a man who made a difference in this world by making a difference in the lives of others, one person at a time. To his family, no words can do full justice to the life of your husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, cousin, brother, and brother-in-law. Bert Wax was someone we cherished. He was a mainstay of our community and a man who never stopped learning and never hesitated to learn from anyone, even from those of us who were younger and less experienced than him. May the memories of his life, the stories you tell, and the stories you will learn over the coming weeks not only keep the legacy of this remarkable man alive, but serve to inspire you to become ever greater Yirei Shamayim B'Seter Uvigalui. On behalf of his many family and friends, Harav Dov Chanoch ben Chaim Yaakov, I ask mechila, forgiveness from you for anything we may have done to hurt you or should have done to help you. May you be a melitz yosher on behalf of your family and a grateful community that will miss you. And may your memory be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. Bila hamavet lanetzach umacha Hashem Elokim dima mi'al kol panim. And now it is my honor to call in sequence first his daughter Ora Aaron, granddaughter Ilana Teller, and then one of the key balabatim and friends from Ezra's Israel, Sheldon Shapiro.
According to Jewish tradition, there are a few significant aspects to a person who leaves this world on Shabbos. Some say that dying on Shabbos is holy. There are those that say that a person who passes away on Shabbos is considered to be a tzaddik. There is a tefillah that is recited on Shabbos afternoon called Tzidkatcha. That tefillah was written in memory of 3 tzaddikim who left this world on Shabbos: Yosef, Moshe Rabbeinu, and David HaMelech. My father passed away on Shabbos. I would like to take that to mean that he too was a tzaddik. My dad was a very learned man. Someone once told me that my dad had more knowledge in his pinky finger than most people have in their entire body. Rabbi Chaim David Regensburg Zatzal was one of the world's leading Talmudic scholars. He also happened to be my father's Rebbe and my father was very close with him. Rabbi Regensburg told my dad that he should not go into business, but rather sit and learn. He was sure that my dad could have been a Talmid Chacham in this generation. In March 1997, when my father received the news that Rabbi Regensburg Zatzal had passed away in Yerushalayim, he did Kriya, sat down in a dining room chair, and wept. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. As many of you know, my father did not heed the advice of his Rebbe. After years of being in Chinuch, he went to work for my Babi and Zaidi at Schwartz's Gumman Brothers bookstore, 2611 West Divan, BR 40286. The address and phone number are ingrained in my memory. Babi and Zaidi went back to Israel in 1970, leaving the store in my dad's hands, and it was there that I had my first job in the summers when I wasn't at camp, polishing silver. Lots and lots of silver Judaica items, and I loved doing it. But let's just say that is no longer a passion of mine. When I was in high school, I crocheted kippot. Yes, that was a thing 50 years ago, for my dad to sell at the store. I also made rings for the lulavim, starting right after Yom Kippur. I looked forward to that every year throughout high school. To this day, I think that I can make rings better than just about anyone, just saying. Having those jobs taught me responsibility, accountability, and money management. I will always be grateful to my dad for helping instill those in me. Learning, retaining, comprehending, and even memorization seemed to be like second nature to my dad. Me, not so much. If I had to study a specific pasuk in Chumash, he would proceed to tell me what parak of what parsha it was in, from anywhere in the Torah. Who does that? He was also amazing with math and history. Math for me, forget it. History, great. That's until I had to memorize dates, battles, etc. For my dad, a piece of cake. It was so annoying. A few years ago, I asked him if he had a photographic memory. He said he thought so. I said, are you kidding me? Why couldn't you share some of that with me? His response, I was still using it at the time. I remember when I was about 3 years old, my dad took me to Sears on Ravenswood and Lawrence. Among the things we bought were 2 towels, a purple one for me and a yellow one for my brother Ari. I picked them up myself. That must have been when my passion for purple began. When I was 3 and Ari was just turning 2, we moved into our house on Quail. A side note, my parents lived there for 59 years. They moved to Park Plaza, Erev Shavuos, 2 years ago. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, my father, Ari, and I were walking to Rabbi Small Shul. We never called shuls by their actual names in those days. We used to walk across the play yard of what was then called Boone School. We walked from one corner on an angle to the opposite corner. My father told us that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and that we were walking across the hypotenuse. I looked up at him and said, the what? I was 4 or 5 after all. Boy, was I excited when a few years later in math class, a teacher asked if anyone knew what a hypotenuse was. Guess who raised her hand? Over the course of the last 40-plus years, my father and I would have conversations pertaining to halacha, Israel, time zones, health, my kids, my grandchildren, Jewish geography, and a myriad of other things. And then, of course, his punny jokes. Oh, those jokes. He would sometimes just call me to tell me that he had either just heard or made one up. He would crack up and then be so proud of himself. Every so often, I would get revenge by calling him to tell him that I made one up. I loved beating him at his own game. Over the last 15 years or so, my dad had many health challenges and scares. Some were quite serious, such as his heart, while others were less so, like his knees. The last 2 years have been extremely challenging. Congestive heart failure, COPD, and poor kidney function were in full swing. And then a bout of pneumonia came along last September around the time of the Chagim. He was in the hospital for about a week and then was transferred to Citadel Wilmette for rehab. He was so weak when he arrived there, but not for long. Boy, did they whip him into shape. From not being able to stand or walk to flying down the halls with his walker. To top it all off, everyone there loved him and his jokes. He was thrilled to have a new audience. Close to 2 months later, he was able to go home. Then 3 weeks ago, another round of pneumonia came along. He was in the hospital for about 5 days and then went back to Citadel. They were all happy to see him, and they looked forward to his humor and his sarcastic wit. But this time, he was so weak and so tired, so much so that he could not do any physical therapy. He rapidly lost weight. He could barely eat or drink. All of his energy was focused on breathing. After running a few tests, they discovered that he had had aspiration pneumonia. A few days later, he was back in the hospital. He declined so quickly that we decided it would be best to put him on palliative care this past Friday afternoon. Approximately 28 hours later, Shabbos afternoon, he passed. 1 minute I was sitting outside with him, enjoying the sunshine and warm weather, and the next minute he was gone. We can't ask why. Hashem has his plans and his reasons. All I know is that there will be a huge void in our lives and in this community. For some reason, whether it was in our apartment or our house, my parents always put me in the bedroom in the back off the kitchen. Why Ari always got the bigger bedroom, I'll never understand. My father nicknamed me the little girl in the back of the house. He even called me that just a few short weeks ago. I know that I'm going to want to call you, Daddy, to play Jewish geography. I will even miss your jokes. I will want to pick up the phone and ask you shilas. We were sitting at the table last night, and a few shilas came up. Ari and I said that we would normally call you for the answers. Daddy, the little girl in the back of the house loves you and will miss you so much. Nothing will ever be the same.
I'm going to try and speak on behalf of all the grandchildren. You never actually think that one day your loved ones just won't be there anymore, that you'll never speak to them or see them again. But that's where we are today. Saba, it's so hard to believe that today. You were always the one who would stand up here and give these speeches. But today we're here for you to try and honor your memory. You could look around here today and see how many people loved you. It's overflowing this room. And this isn't even close to everybody. Saba, you had the most amazing memory. You remembered everything. Jewish geography was your favorite game. You would meet someone, and within 2 minutes, you knew who their parents were, who their grandparents were, where they went to shul, where they went to school, and what street they grew up on. Being the rabbi of a shul, you had to make these connections, but you really made people feel special. You were always the one that I called when I had a Hebrew question in school, or the person that Ima called when she couldn't help me with my homework. People always came up to me, even today, and they would say, "You're Rabbi Wax's granddaughter? Oh, we love him." Or, "My kids love him." Or, "I remember him from Rosenblum's. He was always so nice." I know that it was really hard for you, Saba and Bubby, moving into Park Plaza, but in the end, you guys were so happy there. Saba was able to go to Minyan again. Bubby has all of her classes that she goes to. This Pesach was the first Pesach, aside from Pesach 2020, the one we don't talk about, the COVID Pesach, where we were not together. It would have been too hard for you, so you and Bubby stayed at Park Plaza. You even led the Pesach Seder there, which you used to do with us. And I'm sure it was really hard for you, and it took a lot of energy, but you did it, and it made you so proud. Before writing this speech, I asked the other grandchildren, Yoni, Jesse, Hanani, Jake, and Joshua, some of their favorite memories with you. And here are some of our favorite memories with you. When we flew down to Florida, all of us, to surprise you for your 75th birthday. When Bubby and Saba flew in for Jake and Joshua's graduation, it was very appreciated. When Josh flew into Chicago to visit and spend time with you and Bubby. Pesach in Arizona, and also Pesach in Chicago, where everyone was together. There's summers when Ari, Pola, Jake, and Joshua would come. when Yoni would sneak Saba more desserts when Bubby wasn't looking. Sorry, Bubby. Being honored at the Moshe dinner with you and Ima. Ella's going to be going to Moshe Ba'ir this summer, and we can't wait to have a fourth generation up at Moshe sooner than later. Saba, you had the zechut of naming all 6 of your great-grandchildren, Emma, Daniela, Nikki, Ella, Max, and Teddy. And you also had the zechut of marrying Yoni and Jesse. And so special that you got to be the key point in so many of our family's smachot. Saba, we will miss you so much. You've had many health issues for so long, and you fought so hard through all of them. I hope that you're at peace now. We will miss your bright clothing and outfits. I'm not sure how else to describe your outfits. Maybe eccentric. Only you could pull them off. Your bright purple shirts and red pants and yellow ties, you name it, Saba had it. I'm going to miss all your jokes, or thinking of a joke and waiting to call you to share it with you, because only you would appreciate them. I hope that now you're watching an Arthur marathon, followed by a Perry Mason marathon, while eating endless desserts and treats. Again, sorry, Bubby. From now on, Wednesday will forever be Goose Day. We miss you, Saba, and love you very much. You're definitely the gooest.
I first met Bert Wax in 1957 while studying in the Beis Medrash of the Skok Yeshiva, where I was a first-year student in Rabbi Herzl Kaplan's class, and he was finishing his studies in Rabbis Chaim David Regensburg and Rabbi David Kaganoff's classes. But we really got to know each other much better in the late 1980s, when I was worship chairman and gabbai at Ezras Israel, and he was in the bookstore. Among other projects, the shul would purchase new Torah covers every few years for its many Torahs, and he and I would work out the details together. Around 1990, I recall approaching the president and honorary president of Ezras Israel with the idea of hiring an assistant rabbi for Rabbi Ben Zion Kaganoff. I was assured by them that Rabbi Kaganoff would never allow it. But I persisted, and they finally allowed me to ask Rabbi Kaganoff, which I did. At first, he hesitated, but after some discussion, he asked me if I had anyone in mind. I told him I had only one person in mind, and that was Rabbi Bert Wax. I recall, to my surprise, he immediately said yes. So Rabbi Wax took over 3 duties in the synagogue. He became the Shabbat Torah reader. He conducted a Hashkama minyan on the festivals when Yizkor was recited, and he conducted the overflow service for about 350 people in the synagogue auditorium. So began his association with Ezras Israel. As a synagogue gabbai, I worked very closely with Rabbi Wax. He always made my job easier. There were so many non-rabbinic tasks that he had undertaken because that was the type of person he was. He took a hands-on approach so that everything would run smoothly. He was once asked to make a list of all the things he did in the synagogue. The list had over 20 items, and that did not include replacing the empty boxes of Kleenex in the Beis Medrash. I would like to take a moment to talk about 2 related functions that Rabbi Wax dedicated his efforts to perform. They were maintaining the more than 2,000 Yortzeit plaques and updating the Yortzeit list. First, If someone had ordered a plaque for a deceased loved one, he made sure that the spelling of the names were correct, which was sometimes a very difficult task, that the plaque was ordered and then arrived in a timely manner. Then he himself affixed the plaque to a yard-side board in a proper spot, often needing to rearrange existing plaques, but never separating or connected family members. He knew the connections. He always checked the weekly yard-side lists, always reciting the Kaddish and having in mind those families who requested the synagogue to say the Kaddish. He made sure that the proper lights were lit when a yard-side occurred. And so when Rabbi Kaganoff retired, the hiring of our new senior rabbi was a seamless transition to Rabbi Wax. And so it was until 2009, when he felt health issues required him to retire. But after a few years of retirement, he returned to the pulpit of the synagogue and remained the senior rabbi until retiring once again in November 2017. He loved teaching and learning, so for many years, even after his retirement, he collected and compiled from the many articles he read these type of booklets that were distributed during the high holidays. In addition, he continued to conduct 2 Tuesday morning classes, first in person and later on Zoom. The Haftorah for this past Shabbos Torah portion, B'chukosai, is from Jeremiah and began with the words, Hashem uzi u'ma'ozi umnusi biyom tzara. The Lord, my strength, my stronghold, is my refuge in troubled times. May these words give family and friends strength and comfort for now and evermore. Tihei nafsho tzura b'tzror hachayim.
Please rise for the memorial prayer. El malei rachamim, shochen b'amromim, המצהי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר רקיע מזהירים, לנשמת הרב דוב חנוך בן חיים יעקב, שהלך לעולמו, בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעד הזכרת נשמתו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו, לכהן בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Shalom Memorial Park, located at 1700 West Rand Road in Arlington Heights. The family will be returning to the Park Plaza for Shiva. As you can see on the service folder, there are many times and days, so please refer to that. For those of you who are joining us online, all the information about Shiva can be found on the funeral home's website. Memorial contributions in memory of the rabbi can be made to Hatzalah Chicago or the Chicago Mitzvah Campaign. Again, that information is on the service folder and website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. For your own personal safety, I strongly recommend using your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers: Maury Aaron, Yoni Aaron, Hanani Teller, David Schwartz, Daniel Schwartz, Aryeh Goldberg. At this time, I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place. And then, with the permission of the family, I did ask if we could have any of the rabbi's colleagues to serve as honorary pallbearers. Please follow his casket. So if you were a rabbi in Jewish education or you loved books, please come forward and serve as an honorary pallbearer.